Yeah, no one's singing along for ours really. The hardest part I had, I successfully held back, but like at the end of a song, not clapping. Because I'm used to be like, oh yeah. I was like, this is a movie. We don't clap at the end of songs.
That is correct.
All right,
That's why
we
you
go
lean
live on
on
YouTube.
one arm so you don't clap.
So make you your town of Berlin, right?
I like that the movie was closer to the book than the play is.
Yeah,
Okay. Now you should be able to do anything you need to do.
and we wait a whole year.
Yes, I know. At least if you were paying attention, you knew early on that it was going to be a part one. So
Correct.
because they did advertise it. Well, the movie theater didn't do it and the studios didn't do it, but a lot of the online chatter was the part one.
Well, yeah, because that would have been
Right.
a gigantic suck if you're
Yeah.
sitting there and she's up there and all of a sudden here come the credits.
Yep. That is where the play breaks too.
Correct, correct.
Not quite, but.
Hi, Susan.
Figure out what Scott has in front of his.
He is a gnome.
So
Oh,
no.
yes. My mother needed a hobby, so she got a 3D
Just that
printer.
it looks 3D printed.
And she has been printing for people with reckless abandon. So she got very excited and wanted to make little gnomes and frogs and turkeys and things for the select board. So everyone has a different little thing that she's been able to print with her 3D printer. I have a dreidel for Hanukkah.
Couldn't figure out what to think about it.
Like a Santa.
She's been very excited about her 3D printer.
It's a living icicle.
There you go. Actually, the tip is quite sharp.
Yeah.
So don't stab people with it.
Be dangerous up there.
Right.
God might get frustrated. Go.
I do have a degree in peace studies, so I try to keep things pretty nice. Well, an ex of mine once told me that because I have a degree in peace studies, I know all the dirty tricks in negotiations, because I also know how to disarm them. That means I have to know all the dirty tricks when you do negotiations.
Mhm.
Hopefully, we're not gonna have it.
My employer has never complained that I know those things.
Peg, we're ready whenever you are.
All right, 6:29.
Mine's fast then. Oh yeah, my computer's a minute fast. How is that possible? It says 6:30.
Yeah, that's
But
another
the
problem
phone
that's been
says
happening lately.
6:29. Scott, I'm calling you for tech support next time.
Oh, we do support 3,000 laptops, so yeah. I get to see a lot more things.
Keep one in.
We're so formal.
Mhm.
All right, I got 6:30. You ready? All right, Roger, we're rolling. Okay, welcome. Today is Monday, December 2nd, 2002. Berlin Select Board open meeting. As a reminder, open session, public meetings are subject to being recorded. Your voice and image will be captured forever and ever. Calling the meeting to order at 6:30. Yay, right on time. So for the minutes, we only have one, correct, Dee?
Fourth.
So November 4th. Any questions, comments?
Well, I did not have a chance to read them, but you guys do whatever you want to do.
I've really not looked at, they came in late this afternoon and I spent more time on other parts. I think we just hold off to another meeting for this.
All right, so I will move those to the 16th, which is our next
Yep.
meeting. Two minutes to December 16th. All right, while I'm writing, any general public comments? No, we see shake of the head. All right, 6:31. Come on up, Linda. Come on up, Mr. Pond. We're having our FY 25 tax classification hearing, joint meeting with the Board of Assessors, but I only see a board.
Kristen, is it gonna be in this?
It'll be up there and possibly if you give me the cord for that TV, the HDMI cable.
Because
can
I
put it on there
don't think
too.
I will be able to see
Able to
the
see it.
numbers from here.
Let me see.
You don't have all those numbers memorized? There's only about 30 or 40 of them per slide.
I do like the
Let's see
colors.
how it comes up.
Good job on the colors, very calming,
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah, that is
I
very
try to do
small.
something different.
instead of like screaming red.
Why does
Uh,
this make?
That's maybe fine.
I'm going to figure out a way to make this larger.
So it shouldn't be Zoom laptop, so
I'm closing your participant screen, so it makes it a little bit bigger. Can I just do it on mine? Yeah. Do I need to-
HDMI
Do
cord
I need
here.
an HDMI cord for that one?
Yeah.
For there.
Yes.
I got a cord over here.
This
Will
is
it
the
read?
wrong one.
Is there an HDMI on that can be just undone and moved over?
That one's fine.
It can't be
Oh,
just.
please.
done in that, this one, it's got that thing on it.
Oh,
This is
okay,
not-
yeah.
Oh,
I'm supposed to have a permanent
Yeah. Those
Yeah,
anti-theft things, security gets you in trouble all the time.
I think we're just looking for like a long cord. Do you want me to share it?
We need that
Yeah,
television.
I'm gonna run,
yes.
I'm gonna roll that TV over,
Don't break it.
because there are no plugs on that wall.
What?
There are witnesses,
There are witnesses.
as you point out, forever on the interwebs.
Your voice and image and breakage of town property will be recorded.
Or lack thereof. It could also prove it wasn't broken during the move, and if it,
Oh, never mind, you have a cable on that.
yeah, that's why they moved the television. That television came with cable. And now we'll be forever on that side of the room.
Want to move to the front so you can see?
Yes, thank you.
You see that?
Yeah,
Turn it a little
I
more
think the
towards
three of
the
us
center.
actually have it on our individual devices up here as
Yes.
well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank
you go.
you.
You have to turn it on.
It looks like it has power. Yeah, Yeah.
There it is, you go in blue.
Yep.
For those watching or watching on playback, appreciate your patience while we get things configured.
Oh, we go high tech. There we go.
Roger's gonna do magic. reading.
How's that?
Okay, thank you. Yes.
This is true.
Can see it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that was me. Sorry. It
Yeah.
undid my sound.
Yep.
All right, Linda, you're up.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me this year
Mhm.
again. This is the proposed fiscal year 2025 tax classification hearing. The calculation for the tax rate and the other tax rate numbers are estimated for this presentation. The valuation number are proposed until DOR approvals are given. Mass General Law, Chapter 60, Section 56 allows a shift in the tax burden between property classes. This does not change the total levy as voted by the town meeting. It simply determines the share thrown by each class.
In
These-
fact, sorry, that's the vote we're gonna end up taking is how much we're shifting between the
Right.
various
Correct.
classes. Correct.
Usually these slides are just so the
Yep.
general public knows that we are basing this on Mass
Right.
General Law and with section. These are slides that every year they are in the
Yep.
classification package. The value property for the purpose of taxation based on fair market value by what sales have taken place for the prior calendar year for FY 2025 was a review of 2022 and 2023 sales for class 3 or 4. Usually by the DOR standards, if we do not have enough of sales on certain categories, which 3 and 4 is the commercial and industrial, we can go ahead and do 2 years together. That's what it implies. And the role of the assessor also is to basically review the abatements, exemption, excise, and of course, present the classification hearing to the Board of Selectmen once a year. The purpose of the public tax classification hearing, select board to adopt the town's tax policy by the allocation of the local property tax to the borne by our 4 classes of real and personal property for fiscal FY 25. Tonight, the select board will discuss the tax rate policy. Basically, you will decide if you want to do a single tax rate or a split tax rate, open space discount, residential exemption, and small commercial exemption. Historically, on the town of Berlin, we do vote for split tax rate, and we do have the small commercial exemption, and the open space discount is falls under the residential, which is taxed the same residential and open space. It's the same. We do not have the residential exemption. So the property classification is going to be residential and open space, and the CIP, it means commercial, industrial, and personal property. So this year I decided to include some statistics. So the general taxpayers, I wanted them to be more familiar what goes on behind the numbers. So this is new growth applied as a percentage of prior year levy limits and average single family tax bill. The last couple of years, you can see the growth, the prior year levy limit, and the growth per year from 2021 till 2025. So basically, as you can see here, the growth for 2025 on the percentage prior year levy limit, it's 150%. We didn't have, unfortunately, a lot of growth this year. These are statistics that we have a website on the Division of Local Services, and you can pull all different statistics. So the DOR basically puts a very nice presentation.
And again, in fiscal year 22 and 23, much of that new growth was Highland Commons and River Bridge and the apartments that are over there. And that, as we're expecting it to go down, because we don't have any sort of large scale developments that are proposed or planned, or I think for some people even wanted in town at this point. I think we've done some of those pieces. And so, yeah, we've gotten our bang from those, and there's not sort of more bang coming. Thank you.
And also, you can see the single family values from 2020 to 2024. And the average tax bill as a percentage on the income, it's different statistics. So basically, for 4 years, an average single family tax bill from 6,792 went up to 8,330. For FY 2025, we will present these statistic next year. The DOR didn't have it all together because this is most of the towns. We're still submitting all the numbers. This is new growth summary statistics for 2025. So for residential, commercial, personal property, and the total. So we only had and then in the middle column is the 3-year average growth. It's just statistics. And this is the assessed value trends in Berlin. For FY 2025, total value by class. We have exempt parcel count from 179. You can put DLA4, it's the same, just so. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
DLA4.
Right. And exempt partials are town-owned land or?
Correct.
Okay. And then the churches are
the
exempt, the schools.
Correct. And if we decide to put a piece of land on conservation as well,
Yeah.
I would have to change the code and put it as non-taxable exempt. So all of these are. We have 3 extra parcels compared from last year. These 3 parcels were conservation that I had to basically put them under the exempt status.
So you've added 3
Correct.
conservation this
Mhm.
year. Okay.
Which, yes, will be non-taxable. Last year, they were taxable. This is, I believe, the Conservation Commission.
Mhm.
If I am not mistaken, I think you mentioned a property, is it in Linden Street or?
Yeah, like Horseshoe Pond.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We got that last. I don't know,
Yeah.
that must be one of the three she's referring.
Horseshoe
to.
Pond is the big one.
100
Yeah.
acres.
The other two are smaller parcels that were donated by, I believe, the same individual, but I'm forgetting the
The name,
location.
yeah.
Yeah,
They were smaller though, right, Linda?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, this one was. But this year, I don't know if you're familiar with the 3 ABCs. This is for nonprofit organization that they have to submit the paperwork every year, and I review them. And I had one of the nonprofit, they didn't submit their paperwork on time, and I changed them to taxable because they do have, they own real estate on the town of Berlin, and I basically called the CEO and explained to them, and this year it's going to be taxable. I cannot go against the rules
Mhm.
and the law, and next year, if they submit on time the paperwork, then I will change it into exempt. So this year we have one extra.
I find it amazing that the value of property in this town is almost $1 billion.
Mhm.
I mean, that is a tiny little town and still, but yet the value of,
A lot.
and that doesn't include personal stuff, but still, $1 billion is a serious chunk of money.
So these are this is the LA4 assessment classification that was approved by DOR. And you can see different, the highest is 101, which is the single families. We have 851. We have compare from last year to this year, we have 6 new houses. That's the parcel difference between FY 24 and 25. So we only have 6 new houses this year.
It's
That's
not
about
bad.
average, I think.
Yeah. It's not bad.
This is the personal property. So we had a little bit of growth on personal property, and it was on the assessed utility, which is usually National Grid and Star Verizon. So we had a little bit of growth on that. In total, we have 147 agreement. We have 2 solar agreements. One is taxed under as a personal property, but the other one, I am sure you're aware, the other solar firm, I believe Wheeler. Based on the agreement, it's taxed differently through real estate. And basically there is a set value that I cannot go regardless. If the values go up, that always has to stay in an exact number based on I have to honor the agreement. So usually once I put the tax file into Vadar, onto the treasurer collectors, I sit down and do the calculation what the value should be, and I just didn't give a little bit of a break on the tax bill. A small commercial exemption. Historically, the town of Berlin always voted for a small commercial exemption. It's the qualifying businesses must be on the list supplied by to the assessor by the Division of Employment Assistance Board. Usually once a year I receive something from the Division of Unemployment with all these small businesses that they qualify. There should be some criteria. Value must be less than 1 million, and then it's usually only the 10% that we give a break on the total of the commercial portion, what they have. If some of these are mixed use, which could be residential and commercial, like it could be a house and it could be a store. So basically, when I do the calculation, I divide it, I only give the break on the commercial portion of whatever the value of that this is. Once we set the tax rate, I go ahead and I do the formulas, and then I enter into my system so they can see the break on their tax bill.
I think you say it later on, but the number of these is like 25 or
25. This
25.
year is 25. Last year it was 27, and I had to remove 3 of them because they didn't qualify anymore. One of them, basically, we had an abatement and they were like, I don't have an office space anymore, so they do not qualify. So it's 3 less.
And of the 25, most of them are like home-based businesses, or are these commercial properties in commercial zoned areas?
Home-based.
Okay.
Yeah, because I remember when on the spreadsheet that I have, it's all of them are mixed use. I have the, yeah, it's,
So the 25 or the 27, is that the 10% of the total, or? Did I not
It's a
understand?
10% discount on taxes.
Oh, 10%
Well,
discount.
yeah, no,
Okay.
sorry, we confused. This year it's totally, that will be, they will get
All
the
of them.
tax break of only 25.
Oh, and that's
parcel.
all of them.
Correct.
Okay.
And then you only give a discount 10% off the overall commercial value. Last year we had 27.
Okay,
And there's no using tax like that. There are some home-based businesses in town that we've had some issues with, that the building inspectors had to put some cease and desist stuff together. There's no way for us to say you don't qualify for something like this if there's a sort of open order from the inspector's office. So I feel bad that we would give a discount on taxes on someone who is openly, or not necessarily openly, but someone who's been found in violation of town rules or regulations.
My understanding is if, until something's been resolved, there wouldn't be a way for us to specifically take that exemption away if it's an open issue,
Mhm.
because it depends, they may have the opportunity to resolve it, so.
I try to verify it, but it's very hard because it's hard to go and assess a property.
Mhm.
It's very challenging, so.
People don't necessarily like folks from the town coming on their property.
Well, could we then just, to get an exemption, to get the benefit of an exemption, your property has to be assessed?
Can we require, is that allowed under state law that we require that?
I mean, you can do, you, as a board, you can vote
Right.
not to allow small commercial exemption.
Right.
It's,
I-
yeah,
I generally, I mean, I like the idea of supporting small business. It's not a big dollar amount thing. I just want to make sure that the people who are receiving this benefit from the town and thus shifting taxes to other people in town are actually good citizens of the town. And so, if they have open orders, if they're making the life on town employees not easy. I don't know how much but I'd have to find a way, and I'd love to be able to have this. I have no businesses in mind. I don't know this list of 25. But that, to get a discount from the town, I think you have to be a good corporate citizen of the town. And I get that it might be difficult, that today is probably not the day to do it, but I'd love to explore that a little bit more at some point about what we could do to make sure that people who are getting discounts on their taxes are good corporate citizens of the town.
yeah, I made sure that this year I kind of followed more
Mhm.
thoroughly, and whoever disagreed on that they don't have, I'm not using, which sometimes that's not the case, and I am aware, but I cannot force myself or put my staff in danger if they are refusing. So usually I would just let them know that they disqualify for the 10%.
I think it raises a good point, though, even more globally, in that as we look to the future of how much of our excess levy we have used up in limited resources, and the fact that there's increasing need on all sides, these types of exemptions, as you stated, do shift the burden. So it's something that does merit some future conversation about, do we want to continue to do that? And I think at some point it would make sense for the assessors to come back and give us some data on that exemption and what the total value of that exemption kind of amounts to. And then it would kind of be a discussion for maybe once you do the revaluation in FY 27, where you kind of want to go once you have those numbers down pat.
Yeah, even if you wish, I have the spreadsheet with all the calculation, and I can provide it to you and we can sit down for another discussion. Absolutely, even I mean, this year it's,
Yeah.
unless you,
Right.
as a board, don't want to vote for it this year, that's an option, but I think that, yeah.
We'll have more firm data too as we do the reval, I think, which will be helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
So a lot has changed.
This
Mhm.
is the eligible parcels and this is the total eligible value.
Mhm.
So this year I decided to kind of include more numbers because I believe sometimes when I try to explain how we set the tax rate, I believe it's fair to educate more and it's easier for the taxpayers to comprehend that. So the total amount to be raised, voted at the town meeting, total town budget. I included the numbers. All of these numbers are taken from Gateway, which we all have access, the total estimated receipts, the local receipts, and then the estimated tax levy. It needs to be raised. And the actual levy and the total assessed value, we come with a tax rate of 1534 with no shift.
I can say this slide, I found one of the most useful slides, and if there's a way to even put this like out more publicly, and that the number we vote on tonight, whatever shift we decide or don't do, we're not changing the amount of money we're spending on something. We as the board don't have the ability to add or subtract from the town budget. That is done at town meeting in May.
Correct. It was
The
voted.
FinCom has started the next year's stuff, and so people are interested in affecting that number. But the number we vote on May has a direct line, as you
Mhm.
point out in this slide, to what your taxes will be. And so I thought it was,
Vote on
uh,
at town meeting?
yeah, what you vote on at town
Yeah.
meeting is that they voted at town meeting, and I was there too, and so I also voted at town meeting. That we voted for a town budget of $18,833,785. And you subtract what we get from other stuff, then we have to raise that 15.7 million, divide it by the $1 billion or so we're worth in town, which makes fun peg math, because 15 million divided by 15 is, you end up with a tax rate of $15.34.
Right.
And we might vote to adjust that, because as you point out, we can shift things from one group to another, but that's simple sort of stuff.
I like
Yeah.
the way that it's laid out.
Yeah, because, most of the time when I have the abatement season, I meet a lot of frustrated taxpayers. And one day I was frustrated too, and I called the order, like, I don't know what to do. And they were like, Linda, just put the LA4 at the door.
Right.
And then I was like, okay, because there's a lot of factors that play into
Right.
role. It's also the debt. And then it depends, sometimes the debt, if it's multiple years.
There's also a way that's sometimes hard to say when you add X to the budget, how much is going to affect my taxes, because that 1534 is a pretty neat number, but if the value of your house went up, even if 1534 is the same number as last year, you might pay more. If your value of your property went down, if we change the amount we shift from commercial to residential or residential to commercial, that will affect all those sort of things. And so it's not, if we spent another $1,000 at town meetings, that means you pay $5 more. It is difficult to do some of those things.
It is easier to calculate if it's a single rate, but
Yes.
Yeah, we can see, I believe, in the next slides. And this year I did one, are we good with this one?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. So this is basically the estimates, and you can see, and this year I wanted purposely to put the share percentages so we all could understand, because last year was my first year, and then I know I was and I understand, just because I do numbers and I'm an assessor, I should be able to basically simplify it. So this is the shares if we decide whichever split to go. IP taxpayers cannot pay more than 150, so the last one is the 150. Historically, in the town of Berlin, and I can specifically refer to the last 3 years, because I know that was one of the questions on the email, and I did print the paperwork so you can refer to it. Historically, the last 3 years, 2021, the split was 1.43. And then 23 was 1.49, and 2024 was 1.41. So this is, I try to include more like 12 different scenarios, and then you can see the residential and the commercial, industrial, and personal property and the estimated tax rate. I think it's even, we still have to work on the recap, correct, Kristen, tomorrow, but based on the numbers that I run today, I don't think we're gonna see more than 5 cents, 10 cents differences in the tax rate, because originally Wednesday I sent something else and then I had to change the numbers with a new, I
Right.
want it to be accurate.
And we received clarification from the DOR too, that the vote is on the classifications and the shift, not the actual rate, because it's an estimated rate. So just to put that out there for the public.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Website, you update it every year.
Thank you.
And as much in 23 and 24, the rate went down chunks as much for revaluation as anything else, especially in 23. When it went from 1563 for the residential to 1384 was as much a revaluation year. And so the values went up in town, which allowed the rate to go down as well.
Yeah, we're gonna have the reval next year, so it's gonna be interesting. So these are the share percentages. Usually I don't like to recommend. It's up to you.
And so if I read this correctly, that even if we did the maximum by law shift of 1.5, the tax rate in Berlin would go from 1275 to 1406.
For residential would be.
For
14,
residential, yeah.
Correct, and then the share would be that 7824 would be the share on residential and the 16, correct. And for commercial will be 23.
And that even if we did the maximum shift allowed, the commercial rate will go from 25.45 to 23.2.
Correct.
So even if we shifted the maximum we're allowed to shift to commercial properties, they would still see a reduction in taxes going into fiscal year 25.
It
Who
doesn't,
who would see the reduction, Scott?
Commercial,
Commercial would.
CIP, which is commercial, industrial, and
Personal
personal property, yep.
You mean, how do you mean they would see
So
it?
look. Estimated tax rate for commercial and industrial properties would be 13.02 compared to what they're paying right now, which is 25.45.
Correct.
and the values matter too, because
Mhm.
typically they're in inverse proportion. So when residential values go up, the tax rate typically goes down. So it's hard, especially when you put it through the split, to say that it's an increase or a decrease. It really depends on what that portion of the commercial value is versus how much that property is valued at as well.
I'm being pure tax rate. I'm not talking about percent coming into the town. I'm saying that if I'm a business and I owned $1 million business and I was taxed at 25.45 and I now have that $1 million business and I'm taxed at 23.02,
Yep.
I am paying less in taxes than I did the previous year.
Correct.
And the converse, if I had $1 million
I see what
residential
you're
property
saying.
and I paid 12.75 this year, and we give the maximum split to commercial and I pay 14.06.
Yeah,
My
if
taxes
we
are
go
going
to
to go up.
150, this,
Right.
yeah,
And I'm just using that as, I'm not advocating for 150. I'm just,
Yeah.
even if I go to the very end of the list,
Mhm.
the maximum the state will allow us to do, it will still be a significant increase in the rate for residential taxpayers.
Correct, and this
Correct.
is where that commercial devaluation keeps continuing to come into play and affecting us in terms of where that shift is happening. And, you know, unfortunately, without it, we can see it still would be higher to do just a straight tax rate, because you're looking at 1534 approximately without a shift
Right.
at all for everybody. So there
Right.
is some relief there
Yeah.
still, but it is far less substantial
Right.
relief than it has been in the
Right.
past.
If we went to a single tax rate, it looks like the average resident would see a 20% increase and the average business would see about a 25 to 30% decrease.
Right, so yeah, it doesn't make sense logically.
Okay,
We're gonna have to see where the reval is at. A big, I think, of impact or a impacting factor on this would be the Solomon Pond Mall devaluation that we settled in the ATV case. That was, I don't know how many millions of dollars of devaluation happened there. But unfortunately, that does have a negative impact on the split.
Correct, because I have, sorry to interrupt, I do have some statistic here comparing to FY 24 and 25. So the total assessed value on a percentage differences on the commercial, it went down minus 0.9%. So we are
Right.
correct. I do have the LA4, I can send it to you, but yes.
Right. So looking at the tax valuations in the town report that came out that goes from year 2012 to 2024 of that 12-year period, it looks like residential valuation has actually almost doubled, which is not a surprise. We put some big apartment complexes and developments in town.
Yeah.
And over that same 12-year period, although it went up for a little bit, the commercial valuation's down about 10% from what it was in 2012. And it actually peaked at 2020 at something that's probably a third higher than it is today. And so not surprising to any of us that something magical happened in 2020 that reduced the value of commercial properties. And they've only not recovered. They continue to go down, which will have sort of ongoing impacts.
so can I ask you a question, Scott?
Mhm.
So all the years that I've been doing this, one of the things that I've learned is that we should try to keep well, I should say the tax bills level. So it's not gonna go way up and then way down and so on and so forth. So what is it that we need to be concerned with then? Which particular numbers? Would it,
All the numbers have an impact on what we do.
right,
And Kristen is right. Even if we did the maximum allowed by law shift to commercial, there is less and less commercial to do that to.
mhm,
And so at some point, the commercial will be so small that even doing the 50% will have almost no impact on the tax rate, and we'd be stuck at a 15.34 sort of place because there's not enough commercial to do a split tax rate anymore. And so if you really wanted to smooth out this increase over time, you might start lowering the amount of the shift, even though that raises taxes in the short term by a rate that we don't necessarily need to do, but could. My worry was that if we did a large shift, is that, because the other thing you have to be careful about
shift from
from
residential to commercial.
On the
is-
share.
rather
Yeah.
than share. If you do that too much, you of course also run commercial businesses out of town
Mhm.
because they can't afford it, or they hire their very expensive lawyers and do the abatements out there as well. And so, which we saw from Solomon Pond Mall, and we know that
We saw Sears, we
uh,
had three
Sears.
major
Yep.
one, if you, I had to include all of those.
Yep.
Yeah, it was Sears and it was the personal property.
Yep.
that-
And there's, right, and I'm not trying to call, because there's also some active businesses in town that do that, and it is their right. They don't
Mhm.
want to pay, none of us want to pay any more taxes than we have to. They happen to have high-priced lawyers that go from town to town where they have their businesses and try to fight, especially smaller towns that don't have full-time commercial tax attorneys on their payroll. And Berlin will never have a full-time tax attorney on our payrolls, hopefully. But even if we do the maximum 50%, the tax rate is still going down. And I still think our tax rates are still, even on the commercial side, are in the same range as they are in the towns around us. Which I think makes some of those abatements feel better. If 50% got people about that same 12.75%, but the commercial was like 30, I would expect every business in town to then file abatements all over the place, and we definitely want to do something lower. But I'm tending to the upper end of the chart, depending on how much we want to start softening the blow for future years, or how much we want to limit the raises right now. And I think that's going to be our tough call. Do we limit the blows now, or do we start limiting the blow for 5 or 10 years that might or might not happen? Because no one can predict what's going to happen to commercial or residential. No one predicted COVID. you know. But malls as a whole in the country are not doing great.
So how are our tax rates and in the surrounding towns?
You had that on a slide, right? Were we like around 90?
Yeah, I believe the town of Northborough, they just voted to go to a split, I mean, to
Single.
go to a single tax rate.
The
Because
town
of
report
the
from,
devaluation
right.
of commercial.
well, and the town report that you were great at including the tax rates of surrounding towns in it for fiscal year 24. You know, we are definitely up there at 25.45, but Berlin, Hudson, where we share a mall with, you know, is at 27.5. And so if I'm a business who only cares about my tax rate, I might want to be on the Berlin side already
Mhm.
over the Hudson side, although we do have
Or fight
we-
Marlboro?
we have a special assessment though, public safety special assessment that almost evens that out. But if we go from 25 to 23, we're better off. Marlboro looks like they're at 17.6, which is definitely lower than we are. But it would take a big shift to residential to get us nearer that number.
It's a tough call because you also have to look at where is your future in terms of residential and commercial? And we don't have, as you said, large projects on either side of the equation. And we're up to almost 35% of land in town in conservation. So, I mean, I think we want to be prudent about where we go from here and what we look at next. And I think smart growth and smart development is incredibly important, as well as preserving our resources. I think there has to be a balance between the two. My concern is if we continue to push conservation, putting land in conservation and getting upwards, you know, of 40% or 50%, you're not leaving any land at that point, or very limited land for development at that point. So I think that there's a broader conversation that needs to be had about economic development and residential development. You know, what else do we want to do with Solomon Pond Mall? Where do we want to be along the 495 and 290 corridors? What else could we do there? But also, where is our land for residential development, and where does the town want to go with regard to that? It does prompt a broader discussion that we really haven't had here since I've started. So that would be something to potentially have in the near future.
What would be the outcome of that conversation be? I mean, are you talking about speaking with these boards or?
I think it's seeing where the board wants to go from a policy direction, and then having those conversations with the boards, and also taking a look at what goes on town meeting warrants. And I mean, everything ties in together. Our zoning right now is going through a diagnostic with CMRPC, and they're looking at ways to modernize the zoning. I would also recommend that study take into account areas where the zoning might be unnecessarily restrictive and restricting some of our business activity in areas where it makes sense. And it's hard when you have a smaller community that is bucolic and rural in nature, because you don't want to change the character of the community and what makes Berlin, Berlin. But I think that, you know, looking at perhaps a CMRPC to help us and guide us on some of those recommendations for zoning, and recommendations on what we could do with regard to pad-ready parcels, economic development, those types of things, might be good discussions to have. We don't unfortunately have a planner or economic development person on staff, so it's not a conversation we get to have very often. But I think it would be really great to have those conversations, especially in light of the zoning updates that planning board is doing.
And this year I had like also, we have a lot of chapter land that we have to take in consideration. That's the 25% less than normal tax rate that the residential would pay. So it's a lot of factors. And I don't know, I believe I spoke with Kristen regarding the open space, and I was a little bit surprised here, because usually when I prepare all the numbers, I like to hire a state consultant, someone just to see the numbers. And he was like, how come you have the open space just residential and you don't have also commercial on it? And I said, that's how the town voted. And he was like, if there's a barn and they are having, for example, horses and they're doing some kind of a business, I'm still we're taxing them as residential instead of being commercial.
True, but the things that keep Berlin is that we are treating we want to be able to support our farms that are out there. And so both the chapter land, which is operating farms, and the for-profit businesses that are running again, chapter stuff for our agricultural activities, we definitely want to be supporting those. I think it would dramatically change the cost of Berlin if we turn those chapter lands and tax some of them at commercial rates, because
They would disappear.
they would disappear. They would sell to in a
Right.
heartbeat tomorrow. And so I'm trying to make sure that some of those open spaces and some of those other are still supported, because I don't want to give those people any incentives to be selling those things off for 100 house lots, and there's no difference between us and any other sort of town around. And it does mean we pay a little bit more in taxes for that.
There are some towns that they have open space and they allow chapter lands, but they also have rules that they voted that, for example, if you have a big building, that big building with one would be on a commercial rate. So it depends, but I believe historically was voted that the open space in here would be taxed under the residential, while some towns decided to, even on the open space for certain categories, to have that shift.
I think I think if we have concerns, such as what Kristen has mentioned, it might be to let the different boards know our concerns and in such a way so that they can discuss it, to see whether they can do something to help, rather than us having a meeting saying, we want you to do this. That's not going to go over very big. But I think, like I had said before, when we were talking about mall zoning, put something in writing, put it in a letter, put it in an email, and send it out. I just don't want to be one of those people who's, shaking my finger at people saying that this is what you need to do because we think, we think we need to go in this direction. Because it
I
wouldn't
don't-
be
But we've
Berlin.
never
I don't
done
think,
that.
I don't
We're
think
we're
we're
not
telling
doing
anyone
that.
where to go. I think we're telling people there are pros and cons to two directions. We just make sure that we're consciously going one direction or another and understand the drawbacks that,
But we have to
that all of these
ourselves
tax rates, that
Agree too.
even on these tax rates, there's a pro and con to any one of the
Mhm.
the dozen or so numbers you put there, and there's other numbers you could have put there. You don't need to do every number from 1 to 50, but I mean, and that there's a pro and con to every single one of those numbers. And that I think that's what we're sort of elected to do here, is figure out both that, but also, figure out some of these questions. And, as still relative, I mean, you prepared this relatively early in your tenure last year, and so here's your first sort of full year. I think it is worthy of potentially having some meetings, let's say, February-ish or right after town meeting, another to talk about, like, are there some adjustments that are not wholesale, tax all the chapter land and run all the farms out, but there might be some rules that something of a certain size or a certain valuation or some other ways that we can do that and not change the characteristics of this town.
And I think you making recommendations would be helpful for that.
And I find those recommendations, right, here's the pros and cons of going this
Right.
direction and that piece. I also it lost
And then
me.
once you have a lot of the information, it's easier to make a decision for those people on planning board and on conservation and that kind of thing, when they understand, what we're doing now might be hurting people, or do they want to continue doing that because they don't think it is hurting anyone?
Well, and sadly, decisions about conservation, once they're made, are not easy to undo.
Right.
Pretty
And
much
so,
impossible
right.
these days.
So it's
The housing
good
trust is
going
running across
forward.
this, is that there was a piece of land that is not abutting any other conservation land in town, that the Conservation Commission did not think was in conservation land, but when we went to pull the cards and do other stuff, it turns out it's in conservation land and it has no real conservation value and has value as a buildable housing lot, either for a regular developer or even for the housing trust to put something in there that would put something off of that sort of exempt land and back into the tax land that helps raise some more funds for the town. But you can't undo those things.
Right, you don't have to take every donation that's offered.
Right.
As conservation land, I think maybe an evaluative process too of,
Yeah.
you know, and I think you're right, we should have, you know, and Linda and I have talked about this, putting together some recommendations going
What's that?
forward.
Yes, that would
Yes.
be great, but I believe we also, you know, sometimes I am not aware, and I think I should be more involved. I don't mind going to the meeting and just explaining and educating, absolutely not, whatever it's for the benefit of the town, I'm willing to do it, just to explain, you know, and we can sit down and recommend, absolutely.
I think we can write up some gather the information, not even specifically a recommendation, but something that shows if we do this, this is what happens. If we do this, this is what happens. And then if it's a policy direction and the board is interested in expressing that, you know, that's where it would come from. Because I mean, I can sit here all day long and say, you know, we should develop, we shouldn't develop. That's not for me to decide by
That's
any,
right.
by any means. So.
I think there's a lot of work involved in that, and I don't disagree with anybody's statements, but how much dollar value is gonna come out of that? So now we made the people with a hoss barn upset because that's gonna be commercial and the total, you know, what are we getting out of that? $20,000, or are we gonna get, you know, 2.5 million out of it?
Right.
You know, all that work, all that is work,
Mhm.
you know, for the assessor's office. So I think maybe a dollar value ought to be looked at before we go change all this stuff.
And a lot of anxiety
Right.
for a lot of people.
Right, you know, and then everyone finds out, oh, you're gonna, you know, tax me at a new rate. Well, I'll have to sell a house lot every year. Well, no, we're not doing that. So things get, I guess, talked about in the wrong way, and once that's done, you can't put that fire out. You just can't do it.
Mhm.
No, and getting back to
That's why
the,
you have to be very careful
right,
about how you're gonna approach this.
right, and again, what are we gonna get in the end? What's the dollar value
Mhm.
to the town? And getting back to the the commercial property, how much commercial property do we have left? We are talking about, you know, letting them in, letting all this, how much do we have left to let in? I don't know, maybe we have a lot to let in, but if we're at the end of our quote residential, I mean, commercial property, I mean, may not be much to talk about. Can we add 20 more stores down on Island Commons in Berlin? Or can we add 2 stores?
Well, it's also not just stores, it's also the economy. If suddenly turned around and malls became super valuable, popular places, then
Yeah.
they could go back to what they were even 4 years ago, would
Right.
make this conversation even different than it is right now.
Right,
And I think the point is just long-term planning and where do we want to go and where do we want to be as a community? And it's not saying we're going to change things specifically. It's gathering information, putting options out and evaluating those options. You know, and I view now that I've kind of put out a lot of things that were, you know, urgent. It's, you know, time to start looking at the future and long-term planning.
You're never gonna make everyone happy. There are gonna be, I want Berlin. Businesses on the end, don't bother. And then there are gonna be people who move into town and go, are you kidding me? I'm paying this much for taxes and I get squat for services. So bring them in, and
That's
build
why
them.
I asked, how do our taxes compare with the towns around us? Because I think that up until maybe the last couple of years, I think it was that we were the lowest. We may not be anymore because of what we're spending, you know, at town meeting the last couple of years.
I believe we're kind of.
Yeah, we've been mid.
Yeah, mid,
Wa-
mid,
Wa-
based
has
on
a
the
lot more
statistic.
Commercial to go on, and so they're both residential, commercial is significantly lower than ours. We're pretty mid about the people around us. We're a little
And
higher on
Hudson
commercial,
as
a little
well,
lower on
yeah.
residential. I'm still trying to struggle on what number we want to do a shift at. I'm not in favor of a single tax rate. I'm probably at a number somewhere between 0.35 and the 1.35 and 1.5 for the shift.
No, is this the page you're on, I guess?
Yeah, it's the slide that she has up there, the one that has the chart at the bottom that basically tells you what the tax rate, estimated tax rate would be. Although it's going to be in that ballpark. I mean,
Correct.
it could go up a hundredth or down, up a
So
hundredth or
which
two,
ones are
down
you
a hundredth.
looking at, Scott?
I'm looking at the
1.3,
bottom 5
1.5.
rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe the bottom 6 rows. And I've been trying to do some math to figure out sort of what the average impact would be on the average single family home based on some of those numbers.
Yeah,
So we
let's
would
say
have-
the average
It's like,
single home will be like 650.
right,
Yeah, so we can do the calculation.
So we're, these numbers are sort of a continuation of these numbers? No?
no,
No,
Okay,
these are what was done in previous years.
yes,
This is what's being proposed for this year.
so
So
this
in
is
twenty
just a
twenty-four,
comparison.
we did a 1.41, which is not a line on that spreadsheet, but it'd be
Mhm.
about where 1.4 is. The previous year, we did 1.49, which would be the second to bottom line on that spreadsheet. So that was what we did in 2023.
okay, so
And so
1409
we,
to
yeah,
2287.
right, but as a shift, it's the same. The tax rates are different. That is still a higher tax rate for residential by a significant amount, and it's still a significant cut in the tax rate for commercial and industrial.
Yeah,
Sorry.
'cause even if
I'm
you
about
went
to do a-
halfway, Scott, at the 1.4 line, you're gonna see almost a 4% decrease for commercial, but a
Yeah.
1 point round up 6 increase for residential, so.
And-
Who are you honking off?
Right.
At this meeting, you know? Well,
What did your board come up with?
We
They-
didn't.
They don't, that's our
They
job.
don't,
Yeah.
they
They
don't,
don't,
they
they don't
can't.
make recommendations.
they don't.
They don't.
Nope.
It is our job to make this decision.
Oh, I know
It's
that.
their
but
job to
you
make
can
sure all the
always
numbers are
hear
good.
A recommendation from someone.
Then they're not allowed to recommend.
No,
No.
I can give you my recommendation if you'd like.
As long as it's not the single tax rate,
It is not.
okay?
I would be somewhere between 1.45 and 1.58 in looking at the numbers, and I was initially coming in thinking we should do the 1.5 because the reduction on the commercial side is so drastic from what it was in previous years. But when you think about where we're moving and the new growth diminishing, do you want to split that out and sort of not have as big of an increase or as large of a shock in the following year? So that was, I'm coming in, I would be comfortable somewhere between 1.45 and 5. 1.5.
Not been able to remember a number for 10 seconds. I'm going to write these down. So I can note them down.
so yeah, it was the 1.4 number, Kristen, of the fact, the calculation I did, that it would be a 1.5% increase for residential and a 3.96 decrease for commercial at your 1.4 line.
So these numbers, what,
I got some
where's
shit
the
on the screen.
2024? Oh, here.
2024, it was 1275 for residential
Right.
and 2545 for commercial.
And you would bring it
I'll
up
pull
to
up my little
14?
Right.
Off my
It-
little-
You have no choice. It's going to 14 point something,
Right.
06.
1406 is the
the lowest you can go,
lowest we can
so.
make the residential rate
Mhm.
by law.
So
Uh,
you're hitting 14, it does fifth and then into 15, but 12.75. This doesn't exist
So-
anymore. We're
And-
going up to 14 something.
That's-
And
Right.
what is the,
Do you
what
want to
is
put Berlin
the
here?
reason
Yeah,
that
but I
we're
have to
going
put
so
in the
quickly up to
amount.
14 from 12.7?
Because the resident commercial value has gone down so much that even if we give them the maximum amount we can shift to them
Okay.
50%, the residential will have to cover more of our
Mhm.
taxes.
That was the problem.
Did I say that right?
Yes,
Okay.
that was a true statement.
Yep. And so just for some clarification, so if the average home, single family home in Berlin is 650,000 for round number sake, and we did the 1.4 shift
Mhm.
or versus the 1.5 shift, the difference in the average tax bill is about $170.
Yes, this year I didn't go up on values only on certain
Right,
categories
right,
because I had to pass,
Yep.
but overall I did not
Yep.
change a lot. I only went in certain parts of
Yep.
condos because I had a big gap, so I had to pass the
Yep.
numbers for the DOR. So it's
And-
not a big difference.
And so that although we might be sweating between, again, 1.5 and 1.4, the difference is, $170. It's $15 a month. It isn't money. But the difference between those two is not $500 a year or $100 a month. The big impact is, and for clarification's sake, I have the article because, as Peg points out, we have surrounding newspapers. The Community Advocate pointed out that the Westboro average single-family tax bill for a single-family home is now going to be $12,314. And that even in the range we're talking about between $9,200 and $9,300, or the average tax bill in Berlin being $3,000 a year less than Westboro.
Mhm.
And I know their number because that was an
Mhm.
article, and that they've pointed out Shrewsbury and others that have rates that are even higher than that,
Yeah.
so. I think I'm leaning sort of in about oh shoot, where's my?
1.4.
Yeah, I still feel that I do 1.45, I think is where I think I'd want to go. I actually really want to do
14.19.
1.5, but I understand that hurts us in the future and other stuff. And so I think a 1.45, which would still be sort of lower than we've been most of the 2020s. Because you've been 4.5, 4.8, 4.3, 4.9, 4.9, and 4.1.
What's the difference between 1.45 and 5, Scott? Since you do these numbers so quickly.
Only because I had to start writing down. I was trying to do the math in my head. I'm like, I can't remember the number I just calculated.
Well, 1.45 will give you,
It would
for
be-
residential, it's a 1.44% increase. For
Right.
the
Well, I was just-
1.4, it's 1.57.
So I was doing the 650 times, what is it, 4.5 is 14.19.
Mhm.
So the average tax bill there would be $9,225. And so it's less than $100 increase than it would be at 1.5. Because 1.5 is $9,139. And for anyone paying attention at home, again, these are all estimated numbers. Your driving might vary because we're going on average single-family homes, and so duplexes and farms and condos and commercial properties. And that these are estimated numbers that still could go up or down by a couple hundredths when the final numbers are, crunched.
Right, and I'm guessing values have gone up again, would be my guess. I mean, when we estimated, we were estimating somewhere between like a $650 and $700 increase, and that was just a rough estimate, given what we did in June at the town meeting, so
And
we're
if
not that far off.
if I understand the motion correctly, the motion is not actually the commercial industrial rate or shift. It is the residential shift, which you have been kind enough to put the number on because it's not an equal, it's not a one-to-one relationship. And so if you go up by a 1/10 here, you're not going down by a 1/10 over here. And so if we wanted a commercial industrial shift of 1.45, the residential rate would be 0.9245. And so I would like to put on the table then a motion that we have a residential, I don't have the wording in front of me. A residential factor of 0.9245 for fiscal year 25.
So
It'd be
1.45,
This
correct?
is-
Okay.
So it's residential factor, yep.
Yeah, residential factor. So the commercial shift would be 1.45.
So this will be voted for FY 25.
Well, it's just a motion. It hasn't been passed by
Yeah.
other people yet. And
No.
other people on the board are more than welcome to have their own opinions on this topic.
So the residential rate would then be what? Is it-
14.19.
The estimated rate would be 14.19. Again, the idea that when these numbers are finalized, it could go up or down by.
It's
a
just
couple
for
hundredths.
everybody listening.
Yep,
Yes,
Yep.
So, and what would then be the commercial?
22.26.
Okay.
So it's
Thank you.
this one, yeah.
So if you went back to Scott's math of a $650,000 average
bigger
home
and-
times the 14.9,
Can't see it.
you're
So
looking
I know, I
at
was trying to make it
So
bigger,
we're
sorry.
going
a total
They're
of
going down.
9,223,500.
There's no number that causes the commercial to be the same or go down, go up. That the most we could ever do by law would be 14.06 for residential
Mhm.
and 23.02 for commercial.
Well,
That is the
why-
most we
Tell
could
me
do by
why
law.
you don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that because as commercial goes down, at some point, we're going to be forced to go to a single rate and we'll
Mhm.
jump to 15.34. And I want to start preparing people for that now.
Not have it as big
Let's,
of a
let's
jump.
hope things change that we're not aware of right now.
It's a 5-year trend that
Think,
this has
think
been.
positive.
Yeah, because if you went to the single rate right now, you're looking at a
It-
2.59 increase from your taxes last year. People would just run screaming
Well,
out of
that-
town.
I mean, that's why I would have
Right.
started.
But the other thing is if we're
Lower.
at 1.5, then the only direction we can go next year is raise it more for residential. We have
Correct.
no ability to sort of readjust next
Well,
year.
you
for
are
other-
raising it for residential.
Well, we have no
Next
choice.
year, we would have no choice but raise it by way more because there is no ability to do anything more to commercial. And so if the commercial
Right.
went down even a little bit next year, we could end up with a big increase. And so I want to give us some flexibility going forward.
It helps even it out.
Mhm.
And as you point out, we want to even out the tax bills and it stops things from going up. Lower,
Exponentially.
lower increase this year for a much bigger increase next year. It is better to smooth out these increases over time.
Right. Okay. I will second your motion.
All right, so we have a motion on the table to go with the 1.5 shift at a residential factor of 0.9245. Any additional discussion?
One,
Yeah, 1.45.
Yeah, 1.45.
Yeah.
Sorry, 1.45. No other discussion?
Nope.
All right, motion in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I believe we have other votes to
Yes,
now take as
correct.
well.
Kristen,
Oh,
I
yeah,
believe
sorry.
it's the slide number 17.
Yeah.
Click on. There we go.
So,
And if I remember these correctly, the open space discount we've historically done, the residential exemption we have historically not done, and the
Correct.
small commercial exemption we have historically done.
correct. So I would need the votes.
You need a separate vote for each one, or can we do one vote for all three?
I would do separate. vote.
I would do separate votes for each one.
It's
So I would make
yeah.
a motion that we continue having an open space discount, that we accept chapter land properties as open space.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Nope.
Right.
No, but actually before, I would like to come back and talk about the nuances of this sometime. Probably like again, summer-ish when we're not pressed on a bunch of other things so that when we come back to this next
Just
November,
us.
we have a chance.
I
Yeah,
think, yeah,
it's our policy.
right, and that's what I'm saying.
Right.
We don't even know what each other's thinking, so it would be
Right.
good to have a conversation between us
Oh,
before we add others.
I would add others because they're experts and can answer our questions that we have. I wouldn't want to have
Yes,
a conversation
yes.
without an expert
I'm
present who
saying,
could
no-
answer our questions about what this means.
No boards, no,
No, yeah,
committees,
this is,
just
this
the
is a
assessors
select
is
board
fine.
with the assessor where she can answer
Yeah.
some of the technical and legal questions.
Yes,
Yes.
and then I will
Whether
run
the
the
assessor wants
numbers.
to come along or they
Yeah.
want to join the time is totally up to
no,
the
we need their-
assessors, but
we need their information, yes.
The open space is at what rate now,
Residential.
residential?
yeah,
Okay.
we're continuing the current
Yep.
policy. My motion is to continue the current policy.
Yep.
Did we vote on that? one?
No,
No.
I added more conversation, sorry.
Okay,
So is there a second on that?
I did second.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The residential exemption, as I understand it, really exempts owner occupied stuff and would tax non-owner occupied stuff slightly higher.
Correct.
And the reason the town has not historically done that is that we don't have a lot of non-owner occupied properties.
Correct. So
Um,
Berlin usually is housing owner.
Right.
Percentage wise, yes.
But it would be potentially a policy where it could potentially both raise some revenue and continue to incentivize owner occupied properties as opposed to rented properties here in the town. I'm not planning on making a change tonight.
Yeah.
Mostly because all these numbers are houses of cards and you start pulling a thread and you undo the whole tapestry. But I would, at the same time we talk about open space, would love to talk about exactly how many properties are impacted and what their valuation would be.
Yeah.
So that we have a sense, because we could potentially tax them a little bit higher,
Mhm.
which would also then lessen the burden on owner occupied properties in this town.
I usually receive those forms every year. It's called 38D, so if
Okay.
there's like a rent involved, yes, because I can go in another approach
Yep.
on valuing the property.
What is a good time of year to have this discussion with you?
I'm gonna start working on the reval
Oh.
in January, so it's gonna be a very, very busy
Yes.
couple of months for me.
Well, that's what
But
I mean.
I
Yeah.
do
Maybe it should
believe
be up to-
in summer, yes,
Yeah.
I will be a little bit relieved because I would have all the numbers, because when the
Right.
reval happens, the
The-
whole town goes, I don't go on to section like in
Right.
an intermediate. And then I would have the numbers, and then we can sit and discuss and absolutely whichever.
Yeah,
was
sort of the
best.
reason I sort of picked
Yeah.
summer is that I figured it would take a couple months to put things together. We're about to hit budget season ourselves and town meeting season, and so I want at least that behind us before we did it. So I would, again, do the motion that we continue no residential exemption in the town of Berlin for the coming year, for fiscal 25.
Second,
Any additional discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye. I did some quick math, Kevin. I think the small commercial exemption cost the town about 30 or 40,000, although that was very quick math.
27,000.
27, that's, see,
Correct.
look at that.
Ah,
close.
Hey, pretty good.
And I just played with couple of numbers,
Yep.
but I'm taking like the average
Around
around there, yeah.
And again, I think the idea of supporting some smaller businesses in town is definitely a thing to do. There are people who are here a lot just because they tend to be running their businesses from here, and probably a lot more. It's a lot at stake in the town. So I will do a motion that we continue to do the 10% shift for the small commercial exemption.
Second,
Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
aye.
Hi.
Kristen and or Linda, where are we with any type of discussion about moving away from twice a year billing to quarterly billing?
I just let me finish the reval, and
Okay.
I will, the moment that by June, for me, it's not, for me and Kathy, it's gonna be basically more work
Right.
because
Double the work.
yeah,
Correct.
what I do is like, since we're semi, I only dump my file into Vadar once a year, while if we go quarterly, I have to do that twice a year. So basically, I have to engage Vadar. I would need to spend more hours with Kathy because I need to make sure the numbers are matching, the LA4 is matching. So if it benefits the town, absolutely, in a heartbeat, no problem.
FY
Just- yeah.
27 would be the earliest, once the reval is done, if we were to move in that direction.
Okay, just as a side, we have a home in Ashburnham. They have quarterly tax bills. It seems like you just pay it and you're paying it again.
It's
And
because
on
you
top of
are.
that, they
You are.
send out,
You are.
they, on top of that, you send out, they send out one bill with two things for two different payments. So if you lose that other half of the bill after you pay the first one,
Mhm.
all hell breaks loose.
But I believe it's easier on the taxpayers to divide that onto 4 payments then, and also I believe the town needs more
Money.
It's a
money.
cash flow issue.
It's a cash flow
We almost
issue.
have to
I live in
put it
Oxford,
in
we have
interest.
semi, and I pay around $10,000, and when those two bills come around 5,000 something, it's not
It's
that
okay.
easy on, no, I would rather pay, to be honest with you, like quarterly, because it's, you always have to think like how,
I don't know, because it seems as though the quarterly tax bill is going up and up and up, so it's almost like a half-year tax bill 4 times a year. It's terrible. But
We'll cross
I
that
don't
bridge
know,
when we come to
I
it.
don't know that I would be in favor of it, but it's worth a discussion.
yeah, absolutely, I'm open to
Yeah.
whatever benefits
After
us as a
June.
group. Yes, after June.
After June. Okay, not that June, the
Right.
month of June. There you go. Okay. Just checking. All right. All right, are we good? Can let,
We're good.
let
Thank
Kevin
you
go.
very much. Yes, sir.
Couple other questions, how are we notifying people about the situation we're in here?
About using your old tax bill?
Yeah, how are we notifying them?
So we put it on the website and Facebook and also in the Powder House News that we've sent out to everybody.
Can we
Any-
use code red? Does that qualify as code red?
There's
Because
a-
a lot
I-
of people may not
it's
get the
don't-
newspaper, they may not
I
get.
hadn't heard
Mashpee.
anything about it, and here I am on the board.
How could that be?
And,
How could
that's
that-
what I'm telling you. I mean,
what I'm
sometimes I don't
asking.
hear,
So
I'm
maybe
the last to know.
I was thinking that public orange sign could be put down the dump for a couple of weeks describing it.
Well, you tell me when it'll be up there because I'm gonna go down and read it.
Right, but I don't, it was just an idea to put it down there or a message somewhere. You're right. It just seems like we're not notifying people
Well,
correctly.
I
I don't
wasn't
know, unless
notified,
somebody
so-
else has another idea.
I feel bad for
I
others.
would be using the reverse, it's reverse now, it's not for emergencies, but the non-emergency version of that way more than we are in the town.
Okay.
I can tell you that my office line is on the city of Everett, and if I can go a week without getting a notice from them, it would be great. And
Yeah.
I think here we probably use it for, elections, town
Mhm.
meeting, announcements about tax bills being,
Well, it's-
late and
this
a few
is
other things like
important.
that.
I get phone calls from people that I don't know what to tell them because I didn't know.
Exactly.
And, you
Right.
know,
Can we also do a write-up from the item? Again, just trying to hit all potential levels of folks.
how many people get the item anymore?
I do.
Do we
At
know
one point,
when the-
Margaret had a
Doesn't
PR policy that we
matter.
had someone to
It's out
say
there.
the,
Yeah, I
the
mean, how many
process we go
people
through to
go on
get it.
Facebook? How many people get the newsletter? So if you have 30, then you're gonna get a wider
75%.
spread.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think this, they might be doing the same. One person might be doing all three. You know,
Don't know.
yeah.
Do we know when the estimated bill is coming out?
Did you say January, February?
Thank you. We sent out an email on November 18th to the board about that. I also sent out an email on November 20th to the board about the tax bills.
Yes, you did.
We're not able to, we don't have to externally borrow, which is great. As soon as we can submit the recap sheet, which will be next week, following town meeting. The state typically takes a couple weeks to approve it, and then we will be able to send out the tax bills. So it depends, it's kind of in the state's hands once we move from this point forward.
Yeah,
Okay, so the estimated bill pretty much will be in January
I
then?
would say end of December, beginning of January.
Yeah, okay. Do we know how much that's gonna cost us to do that,
To do what?
to mail that out, that bill?
Right,
Not
that bill,
any
the bill
more
we're sending out at the
normal.
end of December and early January is the bill.
That's
It's
the
not an
normal bill.
estimated bill.
It's
That's
not an
the actual-
estimated bill.
That will be the actual bill.
based on the
Correct,
FY
but
20.
Are we gonna send out, I heard we might send out an estimated.
No.
bill.
Mm-mm.
No,
No?
no estimate.
Old bill and then
I-
just do the
you know,
math. So if
Right,
you're,
So there's no estimated bill being sent out?
No, well,
No.
by the time you got the estimated bill out, we'd be sending the real bill out 2 or 3 weeks later, that
Right.
people get two bills and be more
That was the
confused.
question I had.
So we're not sending out estimated bills.
Okay,
Didn't think we were doing quarterly.
well, I mean, it's gonna depend on what folks want for their taxes too, because if you pay your second half of taxes next year, then it's not gonna count towards this year. So
right,
just take your old tax bill, walk down,
yeah,
fill out a check, write your parcel number on it, give it to Sergio. He
Yeah.
takes it, he makes a copy of it, he writes on it, and he hands it back to you. So when you put your taxes in, now you have 2 tax bills, and then when you get your one in January and you paid $3 and it's $4, you come down with another $1. So,
and I assume that's no interest if it's wrong? You're not
That's
gonna
wrong.
charge me a late fee because I'm off a
If-
dollar, correct?
If you paid it early, there's not a late fee.
But if next year, if it's more money,
Balance due on
If-
your tax bill.
the-
You have 30 days to pay the tax bill.
Right,
Okay.
Pay it within the
The
30
balance.
days.
okay,
There's no penalty.
right.
Yep.
And as we've learned previously, the town has 0 leeway about late fees and
Mhm.
interest because that's a policy set by state law to make sure everyone is done evenly. And so But by paying an estimate, the interest would be then on $30 and not $3,000 because
Right.
you're a little short, but you'll
Yeah.
have 30 days after the bill comes out to make a reconciliation.
Okay. Got it.
Thank you for all your numbers.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
can tell I like
guys.
numbers.
Yes, Scott, you're very knowledgeable and you helped
good
me
job.
on the calculation. Thank you, thank you.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Have a great night. All right, moving on. Kristen, you're up. TA report.
Okay. The November 18th email that Dee sent to the board about prepayment of taxes was just resent out to everybody for those of you who did not see it. Give me just a moment to pull up my TA report, please.
I did see that email, Kristen, but I was thinking that he was asking something different.
Oh, okay.
So it's not as if I didn't see it. It's just he sounded like there was gonna be another bill,
No,
like an estimated bill. And that's what I said, well, I haven't heard anything about that.
no,
Mm-mm.
no estimated bill. If you were to do an estimated bill, they have to go out by September 1st. So we always do actuals. All right, so FY 26 budget, as you know, you voted to recommend the proposed 2% COLA and level spending budget at your meeting back on November 4th. And we used that to complete the budget packages, which were distributed and discussed at the kickoff meeting on the 12th. Budgets were due back to the town accountant on November 29th. She is in the process of reviewing them for accuracy prior to sending them my way. I will then sit down and meet with folks to discuss their requests and prepare a recommended budget for the FinCom to review. The next meeting of the FinCom will be held on December 11th with the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District and Assabet Valley Regional Vocational Technical High School, who will present some preliminary budget information. Those are both in person and hybrid and on YouTube, as are the select board meetings. So you can watch 7:30 on Wednesday evenings. We will be regularly on Wednesday evenings with the FinCom starting in January, just one in December, that being on the 11th, given the holiday. Capital planning has been busy as well. They have met to discuss the December town meeting articles as well as some of the FY 26 capital submittals. At their meeting on the 21st, Highway and Fire presented their, their requests. The remaining departments will present their requests on December 5th and December 19th. Those are in-person meetings. They are here beginning at 7 p.m. Typically in room 18 or room 227, but if you go to mytowngov.org, that will give you the information for those meetings as they are posted. And just a reminder, next Monday will be the winter special town meeting at 6:30 at the Berlin Memorial School Gym, and we do invite all registered voters to attend. South Commons Brown Barn Demo Project. I've prepared the contract with the low quoter, if you will, Action Environmental Corporation, and the amount of $16,775, just waiting to receive all of the contract documents back from that company. Our new Council on Aging Director started on November 18th and has been a welcome addition to our team. Look forward to working with her to best serve the residents of Berlin. We are currently waiting on feedback regarding the Recreation Director job description from the Recreation Committee. The committee has indicated they may recommend turning this into a 10-hour-a-week administrative assistant position rather than a director position. We are waiting for additional feedback from them at this time. And I did have the privilege of attending the Stowe Fire Academy graduation last month. The town's two new full-time recruits, Liam Cushman and Howie Priest, have both graduated and begun working for the town. So welcome and best of luck to both of them. Tax bills. As we just discussed, DOR has authorized the town to use our FY 23 revenue numbers to complete the tax rate process so bills can be sent out. Once approved by the state, the first semi-annual tax bill will be sent out. We anticipate end of December, beginning of January. They'll be due 30 years later.
Days.
Dave, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes, you can pay your tax bill in 30 years. None of us will be here, so it'll be fine. The town will not need to do an external borrowing, so that is great. We also did have a meeting with the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District, who indicated willingness to discuss a 30-day delay in paying January's assessment, but that is now unnecessary, given the willingness with DOR to work with us. So do appreciate that from the schools, but we will be able to move forward with this in short order, which is great. I also did receive excellent news from our insurance company, Maya. Due to our low number of claims, we have been offered a 0% premium increase for FY 26 and up to a maximum of 2.5 for FY 27, and that's up to a maximum. So that's a great benefit to the town in terms of cost savings and budgeting. So we've signed on with them for an additional 2 fiscal years under these terms. Also received an update from the planning board regarding the new Autism Day Center proposed to open in 2026 at the former Worcester Sand and Gravel site. They have presented some conceptual plans to the planning board. Neighbors participated in these meetings and shared some of their concerns, which largely centered around traffic and lights shining in their windows from cars at certain times of day. The project is allowed by right under the Dover Amendment due to its educational components, but the owners, according to the planning board, seem responsive to the concerns of the neighborhood. The center anticipates serving over 200 students aged 18 and over with over 100 teachers. The site will include features such as the day center, stables, businesses for the students to work at, parking, etc. So much more to come on this. More exciting news, the town of Berlin was recognized at the recent Green Communities Summit, along with some other communities in Mass, for reducing its municipal energy consumption by at least 20% after 5 years of implementing its energy reduction plan. This is a tremendous accomplishment for the town. Many, many thanks to Tim Wysocki and the Energy Committee for all of their efforts to make the town a green community and all the work put in towards achieving this notable goal. The second floor public safety renovation project has kicked off with Assabet. They began work on the staircase and scaffolding needed to move materials in and out during the week of Thanksgiving. We are at 95% with construction design documents and we'll have them in the next few weeks. We are extremely excited about the project and happy to report that it is officially underway. We also had the 4th Hazard Mitigation Plan update with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, community representatives and town officials. This is a 5-year plan that we have to update every 5 years. And so we're in the process of doing that, basically identifying and addressing and mitigating hazards in the town and looking at things like dams, flooding, etc., climate change. And still continuing to work with the Historical Commission on the drainage project at 1870 and Bullard House.
Questions? Did we get all the budgets in? Anybody late? Anybody so sad, too bad?
I do not know.
That is quite all right.
We will report back.
That'd be lovely. Appreciate it.
I had a little calendar reminder come up this morning that says, ask about biweekly pay. Where are we at with biweekly pay?
It has been implemented.
Yay.
We had our first biweekly paycheck on the 18th. Is that right? We're in our second cycle of biweekly pay.
Round today.
So, yes, on November, I'm really glad I can do math, the week of the 18th, so that would have been the 21st, was our first biweekly pay, and the 5th, which is Thursday, will be our second.
Yay.
And we have a couple little bugs,
Yeah.
nothing major, but, you know, making sure, you know, deductions and everything is done properly. Knock on wood, so far, no one's had a massive meltdown over it, so I'm very excited about that.
I mean, so when something is this complicated, some of it is just how you respond to the inevitable, you know, you get it 99% right. That still means there's 3 or 4 people who had something small wrong. And so making sure they're made whole quickly and adjusting the system,
Correct.
in my book, is still totally fine.
And this appeared to be an instance where it wasn't that people didn't get the right amount. It may just be that like they didn't have a secondary account that it wasn't doubled the amount that was moved into their secondary account, so the dollar amount was right. It was little glitches like that.
Yay.
Yay,
So
good to hear.
very happy about that. Many, many thanks to June. Kathy D assisted with that project extensively. So very, very thankful to everybody. Amy, Sergio, everybody was, if I'm forgetting anybody, I apologize. That took a lot of work. Really thankful to everybody's efforts on that.
Alrighty. So we are on to have a chat about the ARPA interagency agreements. We have many.
Okay, I did 6 just to be safe. Because I wanted to make sure that we preserve everybody's funding. And so what you have before you tonight, and I can just run down the line if that's helpful for you.
Yeah, if you could just give kind of like for those who may not understand what this is.
Well, between who and who?
Absolutely.
Right, what it is, why we're doing it, and onward we'll go.
Yes, so our federal stimulus money, the town received almost $1 million, $968,458.14 to be exact, in what was known as the American Recovery Act funding. And this is COVID money, the second round. CARES Act was the first round. And the new rules that came out from the state earlier this year stated all funding had to be what's called obligated by December 31st of this year. So
Just check.
obligated
Just check.
means a number of different
Sorry.
things, either entering into contracts or agreements. One of the ways that you can obligate funding that you haven't entered into a contract for services yet with a vendor is to do what's known as an interagency agreement. So these are agreements between the select board and either a board or committee or a department. So we have 6 of them that are not fully under vendor contract at this time that we need to allocate the money in this way. The requirements of these agreements are that they have a dollar amount attached to them. They are with a specific department, board, or committee, and they have a scope of services. So actually did have town council draft that agreement in accordance with ARPA rules because I don't want any issues down the line. It's a pretty simple agreement, but wanted to make sure we were fully in compliance and our money is secure. So the first would be the public safety second floor renovation project. The total ARPA allocation is $158,000, of which we actually do have, we have expended almost 12,000 and we have another 64 under contract, but the rest is for materials. So we did put the entire amount in an interagency agreement between the police department and the fire department. So that would be joint, since it's a joint public safety project. I'd ask both chiefs to sign off on that. Do you want to do these one by one, or you want me to do the whole shebang and
Just do the whole shebang.
Are we gonna do a motion as a whole shebang, or are we gonna do motions individual contracts?
No, let's do the motions as the whole shebang
Okay.
after she goes through
Sure.
all of them.
Okay. The second would be an interagency agreement with the Recreation Committee for the playground at South Commons in the amount of $180,000. This project does need to go out to bid due to the quotes that we received. So we'll be working on bid documents, and I'm actually meeting with the new
Is this-
recreation.
One quick question. Is this going to suffice for ARPA?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So that's why I wanted town council to put it together to make
Right.
sure it met.
I just
the-
didn't know if, because they have to go out to bid, is that the contract that you need to have taken, done before December?
No, according to the Department of Treasury, and they did a whole webinar and came out with a set of guidance documents. An interagency agreement qualifies
Okay.
as an obligation,
That's fine.
which helps us a lot. So we were really thankful for that. So that'll be 180,000 with the Recreation Committee for that playground equipment. And that includes replacing the existing equipment, the site work, and making there's ADA compliant features that are involved in there as well. And I'm actually meeting with the new chair of recreation tomorrow, to discuss this amongst other projects.
So that's one.
That's two.
Two.
So the next would be the Bullard and 1870 drainage improvement project, which is $54,452.14. And that amount is for designing and implementing drainage improvements to the combined 1870 and the Bullard House sites. And we do already have the design quotes or design contract quotes in. I just received permission to execute those from the Historical Commission last week. So we'll get those signed and off, and then there's likely not going to be enough money there to actually implement the drainage improvements. We will probably have to combine that with some additional funding, because believe it or not, just the design of those improvements is almost $25,000. Because stormwater regulations have changed so substantially in the last 8 years. And it's a small site, which means you have to do structural drainage, which is a lot more expensive than if you had a large amount of land and you could do things like retention ponds or rain gardens or some of the more natural drainage. So it is a bit complicated to design it on a small site with existing structures, but we are working on it. The next one is the interior work at the 1870 Town Hall. That was $15,000 that the board allocated. We did put it out to bid for painting, but it came back at, I believe, $35,000. So the committee came back and asked to do some carpeting, some painting, and also some minor repairs inside the building. So that will secure that $15,000 for them. The fifth project is the demo of the old fire station and rescue building, $21,800, to also be matched with some repurposing of the fire station roof replacement article that is on town meeting, which hopefully will pass next week. And so that will be to demo the buildings, remove the debris, and restore the site to what I refer to as a pad-ready parcel. And last but not least, implementing the facility study recommendations from years 0 through 3, meaning now through year 3, which had the leftover funds were put into $17,148.15. And what I did was I attached years 0 through 3 for the buildings that the town does not intend to demo, which would be the 2 fire and rescue building stations. So those were the interagency agreements, if anyone has any questions.
No, you have the contracts, you have the amount we've appropriated as opposed to the amount that's still remaining on it, which is, I think, is a totally fine thing to do. So that
Yeah.
some of the
did that
numbers on
just
these
to be
contracts are a
safe.
little bit different than numbers you said out loud.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Oh.
When you were saying numbers out loud, you were saying the numbers that are remaining in those funds as opposed to the amount of those contracts.
Oh,
But
I'm sorry.
they're all in the same ballpark. The money, the difference in those numbers went to those projects, just the difference between something that's already spent and the amount is remaining.
Correct.
I'm fine with the contracts being for the total amount of the project.
I went back and forth on that
Yep.
one, and I went, just in case one of the contracts should fall through at some point, I think
I
it
agree.
would be better to do the total
Yep.
amount.
And there's also a consistency among it too. I mean, there's only, 2 or 3 of the projects have anything spent, but
Right.
I would make a motion to support those interagency agreements as outlined, and there's 2 copies of each one of them here. So my guess is we have to sign both copies.
Yes, please. That way the department board or committee will have a fully executed one, and we will as well.
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the 6 ARPA interagency agreements?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. You're good to go. Thank you for that.
Yes, there was a lot of work and it will be good for the town.
Yes. So under new business, discuss the special town meeting recall vote bylaw warrant article. I mean, it was for a little history. So last year, Chris, you had asked for it, but giving everything that was going on, we pushed it aside. Scott had recently asked for it. Kristen asked all of us if we wanted her to go forth and put it together. We said yes. She brought it back.
I did not remember. Yeah, remember that.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple meetings that you happen to miss.
I only missed one.
Yeah, and that was the one where Scott and I discussed this and voted on it to put it on the
The warrant.
warrant, so I'm not quite sure what there's left to discuss unless you're asking for us to pass it over.
I am.
Okay, if you want to
Yeah.
make a motion?
Well, yeah,
Well, I wanted to explain.
Yeah.
Because I believe, oh God, I can't even talk now. That mint went down the wrong way. So I believe I had asked Kristen to look into this at one of our meetings. And that was basically when we were concerned about our representation on the school committee. Since this bylaw will not help with the regional school committee, which is what the concern was, I propose we pass over this article basically to show support for the current and future residents who are in elected positions. In my recollection, we have never previously had a need for a recall bylaw. So that's why I was, because it was a person from Boylston who had asked me
Mhm.
about this, and so I asked at this meeting. I don't remember that we actually
it-
directed Kristen to draft something. I just wanted a discussion to see whether that would help with
Right.
the issue that we were having.
And I brought it forward specifically because it did not involve the school board. I
Mhm.
brought it forward because I thought it was a good public policy to have it. I used as my example and continue to use my example that if I left this meeting right now and stole all the money in the treasurer's office
I
and got
know.
arrested and went to jail, I could still be on this board for the
Or you
next 2
dyed your hair
years.
red.
Well, no, but if I could be
Mhm.
on this board for the next 2 years and from jail, do my best to screw up the town. And there's nothing you folks could do to stop it.
But why,
And-
why do you think this
Because
is going to happen now?
I
and
don't think,
hasn't
I think
so
it's the
far?
best time to do this policy
When
is
there's
when
nothing
it's
going on.
not someone you want to recall.
Yep.
This is not written for a
Well, that's
specific person.
probably
This is
true.
not written for a specific board. I worry that if we had someone in mind that we wanted to get out, we would write this for that person and not what is the best
Mhm.
policy for this town. And the idea that you could have an elected official in this town commit a major crime and still be on their board and do things without an ability to get rid of them, I think is problematic. And so when you raised it, it occurred to me that we didn't have it. I thought it was a good public policy to have. And I took it up and decided that we should have it at the town meeting and vote on it to get this on the books before it was needed.
I think we have a hard enough time getting people to run for certain offices or any offices
So-
sometimes, and I think that this may deter them.
I am fine if someone who is wants to run and ruin this town from jail does not want to be on the select board. I am totally fine with that not happening. You know, again, doesn't happen often. Peg did the research. It's happened 2 or 3 times a year across the Commonwealth. Not all of them pass. I think we put some
How many
good.
times in Berlin?
There was none, there was one.
Berlin does not have a
Berlin doesn't
policy.
have
It's
a
not a
bylaw,
policy.
But a
unless-
concern. I
I-
mean,
I
I've been
cannot speak-
involved in this town for 25 years as an elected official. I don't know of any problem
and-
we've ever
And
had,
I agree. And the best time to pass this is when we don't have someone in mind.
or
to
just
prove-
don't pass it. No.
Well,
And
you know
so we
what?
just have a risk. And I think you you're in the minority. I think that there's a risk that we have that I would like to address.
So there's a motion on the table for to pass over this bylaw, recall bylaw on the warrant article. Is there a second?
Not because I don't support it.
And I will not second it either, so motion fails. The recall bylaw stays on the warrant and will be determined by all the town folk at town meeting next week. All right, oh, and there was a question, there was a follow-up from Coffee Talk. Somebody asked who
Mhm.
who were elected officials and appointed, and the three of us tried desperately to come up with that list, but for those watching, if you look on page 2 of the current town report, there is on the page on the left-hand side are the elected and on the right-hand side are the
Right.
appointed. Look at you.
I happen to have this because I wanted it for the tax rates, but it occurs to me this also, which becomes the.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yes, on page 2, town offices 2023, you've got elected by ballot, moderator, clerk, select board, assessors, constables, Assabet Valley School Committee trustee of trust funds, cemetery, library, planning board, Board of Health, and then appointed by us, the board, ADA, town report volunteer, appeals, registrar of voters, historical conservation agent, accountant, auditor, superintendent of road and facilities, superintendent of insect and pest control, tree warden, sexual harassment officer, town council, special town council, labor, burial agent, field driver, and agent to issue burial permits. And then the list goes on, but I'm not gonna read it, so if you're looking forward, it's on page 2. Thank you, you're welcome, Susan. All right,
I meant to say, as a select board member, I always have one of these on me. Now, I had it special for tonight.
all right, so up to the assigning of the town meeting motions. Were there any that we all need to rock, paper, scissors on, for that? I would like to do. Ooh, which one did I want to do? I want to do the building one, because I had already done the information on, that one, the, Article 10, repurpose funding for old fire station replacement roof, so that I can bring forth additional information on costs, if we were going to repair it, what it would cost. And thank you to Kristen and Maya for finding us the premiums on those 2 buildings. $1,100 a year, I think, for those 2 buildings.
That's about right.
So, I think somebody, Steve Clark from planning, had asked that, and we didn't know at the time, so I want to make sure to bring that out as well, because I'm sure someone will ask, how much are we paying for buildings just sitting there?
So you want to
1,100 a
do
year.
10?
Yeah, I'll take 10.
I'm just guessing because of the speech I just made. I'm gonna do the recall one.
Tag, you're it.
Well, I would have done it if we'd passed the other
All
way.
right. All right, so Scott has 7,
Which one's that? 8? No.
7.
No.
Oh, sorry, 8. All right, well, why don't we start at the beginning, unless
Yeah.
there's, all
Okay,
right,
I'll
so who wants 1? 1 is the operating budget transfers.
And I'm guessing all of these are select board. We don't have other people who are, these are all on the, because we put them on the agenda, right?
Well, there are police or fire, but, or there's a couple others that sort of belong to other departments, but they're departments
But-
under the select board.
Right,
So
to say police and fire
We
still
just
would need someone
through
to go
the
for it.
1 through
Yeah.
12 and.
Yeah.
All right, so who wants 1? Budget transfers.
And I'm guessing that there's 10 that we'll all take 2 or 3 of them. I don't
Yep.
have any others that I am particularly passionate about.
This one I prefer not to take, but
Okay, then I'll take it. So I got 1. Number 2 is the public safety 2nd floor renovation project funding. Anyone want it?
I'll do it if you want me to.
And just so you know, Wayne, I always get his last name wrong, Coulson, I think it is, from Assabet will be there to
Excellent.
answer questions
Oh,
that folks have.
Article 3 is to buy a new police cruiser.
Yes, that one's mine.
4 is the revocation of dedication of revenue to opioid stabilization fund. Hearing how you're all fighting for it, take it. All right,
You already have like 3 of them.
I have 3.
But she'll understand.
All right.
it.
Yep.
What's that?
So
We're all
we're
gonna end
doing
up
it.
with like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Number 5 is amend the recreation revolving fund bylaw.
Yeah, sure.
Committee bylaw.
Oh, I probably should do that one.
Should?
Yeah,
Okay.
It has to do with
it's because the
housing
housing trust,
trust.
I sit on the housing trust.
Oh, yeah.
All right, amend electronic voting bylaw, number 7.
Oh, that's easy.
All right,
Yes.
number 8's already spoken for. Number 9 is accept Mass General Law, Chapter 44, prudent investment rule. Scott, want one more number?
Sure,
All right.
sure.
All right, Article 11 is the 5th modification of River Bridge.
Which I
I guess I'm kind of
I
stuck.
think
doing
you're
that
stuck
one.
that way.
That's
Chris.
yours.
I think that's your phone,
Yep.
Chris.
And 12 is transfer funding from affordable housing donation accounts to municipal affording housing trust.
I'm just gonna be up on the.
You might have to give away some of your earlier ones. Scott.
Yeah, I'll
Alright.
take that one, and if
Okay.
someone wants to take, if we're not evenly split, someone can take care of the other ones, the two housing trust ones and the bylaw one.
So you should reassign 3, I think.
Yeah, that's the police cruiser. I'll take it.
I'll do it.
All right,
3.
So
Yeah.
3 goes to Chris.
Yeah.
yep.
All right.
All right, so to recap, Kristen, make sure, keep me honest. I have number 1. Chris has number 2.
We're
Chris
still
is-
over.
What,
Scott
what?
still has 5.
Yeah,
Oh, all right.
I'm just trying to keep it even.
I know,
we don't care, right?
Oh, all right,
I'm fine with 5.
then that's fine.
Someone will accuse me of like hogging the microphone on like, really exciting things out there.
Say they made me.
Yeah, they
We're
may be.
good. Okay.
It's a
then I'm
numbers thing.
Sorry, keep
All right.
going.
That's fine. I'm fine with 5.
all right, so I have 1, Chris has Article 2, Chris has Article 3, I have Article 4. Scott has Article 5 and 6.
Oh,
Chris has Article 7, Scott has 8. Scott has 9, I have 10. Chris has 11, Scott has 12.
What I have.
All right, done. All right, I know the next item is notice of intent to appoint part-time rec counselors. Did we ever get the paperwork? Skip that. All right, so I will pass that over and plop that on the 16th. Next item up is select board provide town administrator direction on FY 26 budget process. Chris, I understand that's yours, so I'll let you speak to it.
well, I know that we've already chosen to support the COLA at 2%. This year's let's see, my question, I guess, was this year's percentage increase for the budget. Do you remember what it was?
For 25?
It just does in our town administrator report and level spending budget for fiscal
Yeah.
year 26.
Right,
So flat.
Yep.
Right.
So starting with
So is that-
your,
go ahead.
starting with your 25 number, and then anything that has to go higher than that beyond the 2% COLA would have to be justified through like a contract or a quote that shows that it's gonna cost more, that there's a contractual, non-discretionary cost to it. So basically no specific percent increase in expenses, just the COLA. We're going very conservative.
Well, in reading the letter that you're gonna send to department heads and schools and so on. It is that,
Good.
I was just gonna say that it sort of gives people the out too, like, we'll consider it, but we've said level spending, right?
Do you mean by they can submit a supplemental funding request? Because we want to know what those needs are, even if we can't fund them.
Right.
That's kind of, personnel has said that they want to know, if there's positions that are coming to retirement, or are they going to have needs that are open? One of the things we tried to do last year was map out like a 5-year personnel plan.
Mhm.
That didn't work out as well as I wanted it to, kind of like what we did for capital. But it's sort of really trying to at least put those needs in a spreadsheet from those supplemental funding requests. So at least we can see where we're at and get it on people's radar so that, in a year that all of a sudden becomes an imminent need. People aren't like, well, where's this coming from? We didn't even know it was here. So just sort of kind of getting it on the radar is the
Right.
idea with that.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing, because in my previous years on different boards, it's always takes about 2 to 3 years of mentioning something before it gets
Yes.
funded.
That is what I've noticed too. So
Yeah.
that was kind of my thinking with that.
Yeah, I mean, so,
Because
yeah.
if it comes out of the left
you-
field, people are like,
Oh,
no,
yeah,
we're not gonna
no,
fund that.
no one will vote for it, right? But I know that last year, it seemed like we didn't have a chance to have discussion on the school's budget. Like, I mean, as much as we probably should have. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you would go to the finance committee and it seemed as though sometimes that it was all decided there at the finance committee meeting. So I want us to be able to give direction, for whatever they're asking, or
I don't remember that at all last year. I remember sitting at this table and arguing The three of us
Well, I know, we
arguing.
didn't probably come up with a direction.
No,
that-
but I mean, because if, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah. Hold on for another moment.
All right.
What I was gonna say, I think part of the issue last year and why it's probably unclear is we just didn't get that information
Mhm.
Yes,
in a timely
Absolutely.
fashion, which I have been assured will not be the case this year. And I'm
That's good to
hoping
know.
on the 11th that will start us moving down that right path. And my goal is to disseminate everything received to both the select board and the FinCom, so that information is universally disseminated across the board.
Mhm.
And it's certainly something we can have conversations at FinCom Select Board, all of those meetings. But what we've also learned from DESI is that they are really allowed to give us their bottom line number, and that's the only one now that we can print in the warrant. FinCom can't come up with a alternate budget.
Correct.
And it's a yay or a nay on the board, on the school's final bottom line budget number. So I don't know that, I think we can push back in areas where we don't understand or we want more information, or we're saying, I don't really think we have the resources to fund that. And we can certainly look at everything filters down, once we put the other department budgets in and what we have left over and have that, discussion. But it's more gonna be, this is what we have left over, this is what they want. I doubt they're going to line up, and
Is
it's
it,
gonna come down to the voters.
Well, Scott, I'm gonna steal your example from last year, is that they can give us a line item budget all they want, and at the end of the day, we give them $20 and they paint the halls gold.
Mhm.
We have no say. They want $20, we give them $20.
that's true, but I know that years past, the school committee did work with the town.
We can't make anybody work with us.
Right, and years
So-
past, there were separate school committees, and in theory, last year was the first year we really tried to do things as a regional school, and regional school from both DESI and from our lawyers and from what I found online, the school gives us a number, we vote yes or no, and if we vote no,
And that's it.
then there's a second meeting where they can ask for that same number again, and we can vote no, and then there's another meeting that are both towns together, and that's the number, that's the
I
meeting that sets it,
understand.
and so we have no
So
say
it's-
in any of the
it's on
individual
school
numbers.
committee.
Yes, well, but when it was a separate sort of committees, we have no say over it.
It's regional, it's a Tohoto the whole time.
But Tohoto was regional, but
Yes.
because there were separate budgets, we had more say over things. And so we probably
They
want
were
to
just-
look at the
I
school
think we were
budget.
just
the-
more
the
accepting.
agreement.
Well,
You
I
know?
mean, so getting back to the point of
Yeah.
providing the town administrator direction, so are you saying, I'm looking at the TA Act, which talks about the administrator, sorry for pointing at you and going her.
Well, we're
the-
the policy people.
Yes, but are you saying that there is something in here that Kristen is not doing that you want her to do or should do, but is not here? The laundry list is long for budgetary powers and responsibilities.
Right.
So is there anything that she's doing
Well, I guess I'd
wrong?
have to take a look at that.
Yeah, so.
I don't know. I don't think so.
All right, so what are you asking Kristen or us to ask Kristen to do differently?
I guess
This year.
just maybe, every chance you get just to come back to us and say, how do you feel about this number rather than, this is what the, say recreation gave to me, is this gonna work? Or, give us feedback on how you arrive at some of your decisions.
Right, but she can only do that at public meetings, because otherwise
Right.
we're blowing right through. And
Exactly.
I felt that you did last year, that's why I called it budget fund, so.
Well, I brought it in pieces last year.
To be an argument about it. I'm just asking for, let us give you some direction.
Right, well, that's what I'm asking, that's what I'm looking for, is what type of direction do we
And-
want to give her?
And so if I may,
Anytime
Absolutely.
anytime she may need direction.
what I, as a select board member, and maybe not as an action of the board, but I'm giving notice that in some respects as we go through the budget this year, I think I would like to I will plan to ask which line items we are legally required to do
Okay,
and which ones we are doing because we as a town would like to do.
sure.
Because I think that helps us have a better sense of what might be cuttable and not. And in a great universe, even like, who is telling us, I don't think I need to know chapter like Mass General Law X, but like, these sort of things. I have some grave concerns that the school is, who we have no say over their budget, is going to ask for another large increase. And even if we ask the schools to make cuts, I think we might need to be looking at the town at not fund cuts to be made. And I think not fund cuts have to be made potentially in things that are not legally required for us to be doing. And so I want to start exploring what some of those are. I also want to go sort of unnoticed that some of these sort of not fun cuts that I might suggest, I myself might not be in great favor of, but I want us to at least be aware of them. And that if I'm looking at potentially cuts, and I know cuts, I mean, we have some proponents of everything the town does. I think all the town employees are hardworking and good meeting, that I besmirch no one by saying, should we continue to do this or should we not? I think it has to be a serious conversation if we want to keep taxes affordable in this town, is that not only are we going to be asking the schools to make potentially unpopular cuts, but we should be looking at some unpopular cuts myself. And I'm totally fine if most of my cuts, where we legally can, I might be asking for cuts. And so I'm going to be totally fine if I get voted down 2-1 on a lot of these. Because I also think that the people out there, and I see this is that someone will say, my taxes are too high. And then the next sentence ask why the transfer station is not open more hours. You know, why are my taxes so high? But why did the plow take 2 hours to get to my street? Every service we do in this town costs money, you know, and so it is a conversation where there's not a right or wrong answer about what's the level of services we want for what amount of taxes we're willing to pay. And I'd like to just explore some of those a little bit deeper this year.
Or those things that he's saying, okay,
Yeah, I mean, because unfortunately it's not gonna be, I do not think it will be a fun budget season. I think we need to do a better job educating those here, and those watching and attending future budget meetings to make Scott's point exact. If you're looking for this, then unfortunately this and this have to go, and when this and this go, this is gonna impact you this way, so make the decision.
right, the direction,
Right.
that's a direction that the board can give.
It's a suggestion that the board can give.
It needs to be a direction, you know, that's what we do is give direction.
Right, but we can't give direction to the school committee.
No, I'm talking about to Kristen.
And
Yeah,
I hope the
I'm
request
not
doesn't
worried
become
about
too
it. You were just
burdensome.
giving-
So at some point,
he
if
was
I'm
just
asking
giving
too many
direct
detailed
answers.
questions,
Right.
you know,
He was giving.
but I
her
figured the
what
earlier I
he
give it to you, the
wanted.
earlier
And
she can
that's
prepare.
okay.
Yeah.
Then we're okay with it.
All right, then let's move on. All right, next up is a consideration of a donation from Eagle Leasing, 258 Turnpike Road, Southborough, consisting of 2 Conex boxes with a value of about 5,000 each.
So these folks generously offered to make a permanent donation to the town of 2 20-foot Connex containers to store the Assabet tools, materials, and equipment during construction while they are here. They would be stored in the parking lot near the old shed across from the flagpole and generator area. Assabet will likely build a temporary roof over the boxes for additional outside storage to keep materials or equipment out of the elements. It'll save us over $3,600 for the time Assabet is here working, as the rental fees are $150 a month. And then later, the fire department can use them for a training building to perhaps put up at the highway garage or by the transfer station, but that permanent hasn't been decided yet. The select board is legally responsible for accepting all donations to the town, and they have asked for a donation letter, which they can use for their taxes as a write-off. So that is why it is here before you.
And do these boxes have ongoing maintenance needs?
That is a good question.
And as I understand that disposing of these, once we decide we don't need them, is actually a significant cost.
Okay. I can find those things out.
I imagine as a large metal box, the amount of maintenance needs is
Minimal.
tiny.
I wouldn't
They-
think on.
they don't have
maintenance,
roofs,
but
plumbing.
disposal.
Did they say they were gonna buy them if they didn't get some?
Well, buying them would have to
We
go
were
through
gonna rent
capital
them.
planning but renting them is $3,600. But I mean, I like the idea. I think there's use. The transfer station already has a couple of them up there. you know, there's one of these by the Brown Barn that I'd love to see go somewhere. And so I worry that as a town, we end up collecting a large bunch of large metal boxes that we don't have uses for.
Hmm.
And we could pay Assabet to break it down into smaller pieces and bring them over to a salvage yard somewhere, but have fun with acetylene torch day. That will be just a fun project.
I can definitely get more information on disposal,
Yeah.
how that would work, if it could be broken down by the students
Yeah.
at the end.
How important is the timeliness of this? Could you do some of that research and have us do a meeting on the 9th before town meeting to,
They wanted to deliver them
Yeah.
today.
oh,
And I said, yeah, I said, they have to be accepted by the board first. I can,
I can make a motion to approve. Do I hear a
You-
second?
Motion in accordance with MGL chapter 44, section 53.5A.
Right.
53.
Are you sure? Are you sure about that, Dee?
I am.
Okay.
Thank
Is there a second?
I'll second it. I don't think I feel so strongly about this that I want to oppose this and stop this project from happening, because I so believe in this project, and the project is saving us so much money that if the added to the cost of this is a disposal of a couple of boxes, it still saves a serious chunk of money. So,
it's a valid question that
Yeah.
I can find out more information
Just-
on for you.
right.
All right,
We
so,
just talked earlier about accepting donations and having them have negative long-term consequences. So I
get that.
figured I wanted.
so we have a motion and a second.
Yes, it will.
Lots of discussion's been had. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to boards, questions and liaison updates. Mr. Larkins, you can kick it off down there.
See, 2 Post-it notes though, so you know.
I'm so proud of you.
I would like us to make sure we add back to agendas talking about buildings.
Yes.
Oh.
I think we took care of some of the easier ones, the buildings. I am most interested in having very unpleasant conversations about, include the old highway barn, the Bullard House, and the library. I imagine as part of those conversations, and it could be both as a precursor to it or as part of it, really what our space sort of needs are for things out there. Because whether or not some of those buildings have uses to handle some of our space needs. And how we might continue in this town to have better policies about what we accept and what we keep. We did something with was it really ARPA funds with Margaret? We used some sort of funds to do a dumpster and sort of cleaning out some stuff. But we still continue to find trucks and I think through the helps of, I don't know if was Lisa a volunteer in the clerk's office or paid in the clerk's office, but found that with her help, there was a lot of cleaning up of stuff in there. And just wondering how many more sort of corners and boxes and document retention policies that we can decide that we have to include stuff.
I need to,
For what?
what he's saying, he's giving her direction to do something. Is that okay with you too?
Well, I'm putting it on the agenda because it was
Okay.
something that we promised to do,
Oh,
the
the- oh, the-
facilities.
Yeah, I'm asking these to generally be on the agenda. I tend to be looking at Kristen because she'll be the reason, but these are for agenda items on those stuff.
Yeah,
And then again, I didn't see we have a December 9th meeting scheduled before town meeting. Should we have one of those?
Well, yeah, we usually do
Right.
our,
Should do
we
that.
meet
Like a
at, we
half
meet
hour.
at 6.
Yep. Yeah.
We meet
Um,
at 6 and then close it at the end of the meeting.
And I don't have anything to talk about, but I think we should keep ARPA on that agenda. It might be something we just pass over, but because we're near the end of the year, just to make sure there's nothing that comes up that requires us to
we
do
just
it.
did the interagency.
We did everything we thought we
agreements.
needed to do, but
Yeah.
with only one other meeting before the end of the year, just having it on the agenda,
I'm sure
I'm
Kristen
expecting it would
can
be,
Remember
passed.
Well, and
over.
some things, I mean, finance may have something, capital planning, I know in a couple meetings that I attended, they said that they would make decisions on the floor, so it would be nice just to be there in case something needs to happen.
I think that'll be fine for now. I can save some of the other stuff for another meeting.
All right, Chris?
I sat in on Melissa's first Council on Aging meeting. Thank you, Dee. And But I mean, they're all just getting to know each other, I think, and so there really wasn't a lot of new stuff, but it sounds like they're going to be having a lot of new, different kind of ideas from Melissa.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right, so rec, as we talked about earlier, that they may shift it from a director to an admin position. They're still working the way through that. The rec software is in, and I guess training is underway. It's cranking. And it was mentioned that there were cracks already in the court. So I took a jog down. Actually, I took the car, I didn't jog. Drove down and found some cracks between the two tennis nets. Notified Kristen, who notified Lazaro, who came right in, filled them in. They're not pretty, but I'm thinking that they just filled them in so they don't go in the wintertime. But they'll be back in the spring, correct, to make them
Yes,
pretty?
they're coming back to paint them in the spring. They can't, it won't adhere in this
Yeah, it's
cold.
too cold. Yeah. And then Concom, nothing really going on in Maplewood. Highland Ridge seems okay. They've got some issues they're addressing on a street in town. They are working on the CR for the Powder House Hill. I think that's on their agenda for Wednesday. And also working on some additional trail maintenance. I've noticed that they're going around putting up signs saying, you know, project funded by CPA. I saw that one at the Bullard House the other day. And they are working with Tohoto to get some volunteers, to see if they can put some items together and get kids a little bit more interested, in that. And also, thank you, Dee, for reaching out to website person, for doing after hours training. I don't know what happened to that, not my call, but appreciate you making that because I know it was a concern. And that's all I got. I don't have anything on energy. I'm so sorry. All right, no need for executive session. Is there a motion for an adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Hi,
All right, see you on Monday.
thanks. There.